Yes. Okay. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started for today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Finding the Opportunity in Opportunity Zones, presented by land experts and RLI members Matt Davis and Bob Turner, ALC. My name is Amanda Maroney, the Education Manager for RLI, and I'll be your host today. The Realtors Land Institute, the voice of land, continually strives to maintain its status as the acknowledged leader for all matters pertaining to the land real estate profession. RLI endeavors to remain the essential membership organization for the extraordinary real estate professionals who broker, lease, sell, develop, and manage our most precious resource, the land. We're here to provide our members the expertise, camaraderie, and resources that are the foundation for all land real estate professionals to become the best in the business. While this webinar does not count as credit towards RLI's Elite Accredited Land Consultant ALC designation, it is filled with valuable expertise. So let's get started. For today, opportunity zones have been the talk of the real estate industry since they were created by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act on December 22nd, 2017. They provide a new economic development tool that offers substantial tax incentives to investors. But what are they? How do they impact real estate, and how can we benefit? We'd love to hear from you today. From you all during today's presentation, so feel free to type your questions in the chat box. The chat box icon is located, I believe, either at the top of your screen or for some others towards the bottom. And we'll be checking your questions throughout, and Matt and Bob will answer them at the end of today's presentation. I am pleased to introduce Matt Davis and Bob Turner, ALC, as our presenter for today. Matt Davis has been with Cushman & Wakefield since 2008, and during that time has primarily focused on assisting clients with the disposition and acquisition of their land and investment assets. Mr. Davis specializes in the sale of large, complex holdings and improved properties throughout North America. He has transacted over 30,000 acres for diverse uses ranging from production, agricultural, and ranching to conservation and master planned community development. Bob Turner, ALC, has served as the 2016 RLI National President. Bob is a proud realtor and has been a land broker for over 37 years. Bob is considered NAR's realtor expert on qualified opportunity zones and was even invited to the stage by U.S. President Donald Trump at the last realtor legislative meetings and trade expo to speak on the topic. Bob has been an active member of RLI since 1996, earning his ALC designation in 2006. Among his many contributions to the organization, he has served on the RLI Board of Directors as the RLI representative to the NAR Executive Committee, the RLI Tennessee Chapter President, and as the chair of the RLI 2012 National Land Conference. He personally operates farms, mobile home parks, residential and commercial developments, and brokers land in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. For those of you just joining for today, welcome to today's session, Finding the Opportunity in Opportunity Zones, presented by Matt Davis and Bob Turner, ALC. Matt and Bob, I'd like to thank you again for presenting for today, and I will turn it over to you all to get the presentation started.
Thanks, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Everyone, have a good day.
If you are a participant, please press
And you
pound.
can go ahead and
The meeting has not
share your screen, and we will bring up the presentation then. Yep.
Perfect. Amanda, have you gone through and muted everyone again? I think there was a number of people off mute. We were getting some pretty good background noise there.
Yes, I'm going through it right now and muting everybody, and I see that there had been a few others that have signed on during that time as well, so yes.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Pretty excited to be here with Bob and talk about opportunity zones. They're clearly a hot topic in the marketplace right now, and It's going to be exciting to see how it all plays out and ultimately benefits our businesses and the communities we live and work in. So just as a quick overview, we'll start with what are opportunity zones, a little bit of history on how they came to be, dig into how they work, and ultimately who will benefit. And then Bob will jump into what realtors can do in their markets and how they can leverage this to benefit their businesses. What was missed in the opportunity zones? What didn't it cover? We'll highlight some of the resources that are out there, and there's a follow-up PDF that's essentially our notes for the webinar, and it has links to a lot of various resources and information pages and tools that you can all access. And then we'll hit Q&A at the end and hopefully address any questions that came up during the presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat feature while we're going, or save them to the end, and we'll try to address everything there at the end. So diving in, what is the Opportunity Zones program, and a little history on it. As Amanda mentioned, it was created by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, approved in December 22nd, 2017. And it's intended to incentivize new equity investment in economically distressed areas with the goal of spurring economic development and job creation. That is probably not the right. I think our slide got messed up there.
You got to go back.
Let me see here. Bear with me here 1 second. I apologize, guys. Technology's great until it's not. Okay, well, I'll keep talking. We'll figure it out here. The state governors were asked to select up to 25% of their low-income census tracts to be designated as opportunity zones in their states, and it was subject to certain limitations. So the federal government, directed the governors to give them guidance on where these opportunity zones should be located in each state. From there, the first set of opportunity zones covering parts of 18 states were designated on April 9th, 2018. And since that time, we've now got opportunity zones covering parts of all 50 states, the District of Columbia, the 5 major U.S. territories, and there's roughly 8,700 opportunity zones across the country. The IRS has released 2 sets of guidance to help investors understand how to utilize the program. The first set was issued on October 19th, 2017, and the second set of regulations was released on April 18th, 2019. So while the full law isn't in place yet, we've got some good guidance from the IRS and the Treasury, and at this point, most of the ambiguity in the law has been, sufficiently clarified, and that's going to lead to accelerating investment and activity in the marketplace. A lot of people were holding back until there was more guidance, more clarity in the space, and lenders as well were kind of on the sidelines waiting for this to a little bit better understanding of how this was all going to be treated. So with a little bit of history behind us, how does it work? What is the program? And what does it all mean? The funding mechanism is unrealized capital gains held by taxable investors. This can be any appreciated asset. So you inherit a pocket watch from your grandfather. You've held it for a number of years. It's gone up 100 times in value. You decide you're ready to sell it. Rather than pay capital gains tax on that, you could invest those gains into an opportunity fund. It also applies to real estate, but again, any appreciated asset can be can be folded into this program.
I'll turn it up now.
You have 180 days from the time you sell to put the money into a qualified opportunity zone fund. And one of the differences, a lot of people question how does this compare to 1031 exchanges and other types of tools to protect capital gains. One of the great things about this is you don't have to reinvest your basis. So you can take your original investment, move it somewhere else, and you only have to invest the gains to protect limit the tax liability. Again, you must invest into a qualified opportunity fund. So what is that? It's a partnership or a corporation that can be formed, and you can self-certify with the IRS using Form 8996, and that form is offered in draft basis currently. We'll have a link in the follow-up document. But it's a simple form. Anybody could create a partnership or a corporation, self-certify, and create a fund. There are three potential tax benefits for investors. The first being a temporary deferral of the capital gain tax on the original investment. This goes out to 2026 or until the investment is sold, whichever is earlier. So again, you take that $100,000 in gains that you got from inherited property or real estate or something. You invest those gains, and you defer any capital gain tax on those until you sell out of the fund or until 2026. Again, whichever is earlier. The time you hold in the opportunity fund is critical to the gains received. The goal here is to get you to invest for the long term. So they create that motivation by providing you step-up basis on that deferred gain, depending on how long you hold in the fund. So if you hold for 5 years, you get a 10% step up in basis. If you hold for a total of 7 years, you get another 5% step up in basis for a total of 15% step up in your basis for the original investment. Arguably the most beneficial benefit from the program is if you hold your investment in the fund for 10 years or more, you get a permanent exclusion of all capital gains on the investment in that fund. And that exclusion only applies to the gains on the accrued investment made through the opportunity fund. There's no permanent exclusion on the original or deferred gains, which are potential to benefit from the step-up basis. So two separate treatments for the original gains and then the gains from your investment in the fund. The investor can sell his interest in the opportunity fund and then has 6 months to reinvest. So there's a lot of opportunity to move between assets, but doing so does restart the 10-year clock for a permanent exclusion. Both funds and investors can sell or reinvest. However, you may be subject to tax on interim gain. And one of the downsides of this is if you invest in a syndicated fund, investors may not be able to control when assets are sold within a fund. So it could open you up to potential tax liability, again, if you don't control the fund. So some of the rules on funds and limitations on how they invest and in order to qualify, 90% of the opportunity zone funds need to be eligible investments at all times. And there's some caveats to that we'll get into. Funds can hold assets directly, real estate, or they can invest in businesses that are qualifying opportunity zone businesses. The qualifying businesses must have 70% of the business's tangible assets be eligible Opportunity Zone property. They must derive at least 50% of their gross income from an active trade or business located in one Opportunity Zone. And they must have been established after December 31st, 2017. So again, this is looking to create new investment, new business. The latest guidance provided some real critical clarification on what qualifies as an Opportunity Zone business, subject to a few different tests. Those three tests are 50% of the hours worked by employees or contractors take place in an Opportunity Zone, or 50% of the labor costs are from services performed by employees or contractors in Opportunity Zones, or property management or operation function in an Opportunity Zones are required to generate 50% of the gross income. So the clarifications have really tried to expand the opportunities and clarify what type of business investments will qualify. Jumping into the kind of tests for real estate investments to qualify. One is the original use. The real estate, the building, the improvements have to be put to original use. So it's the first time a structure is put into service, generally accepted to be certificate of occupancy. So, you know, the opportunity, they don't want you buying existing buildings that have been established, operating, and are stable. They want you to create new investment, new buildings. There's some provisions in the guidance that allow for buildings that have been vacant for a certain period of time, and again, to kind of motivate reinvestment into underutilized real estate. The second test would be substantially improved, and the test here is the need to double the basis in the structure within 30 months. So this is the basis on the improved real estate. So let's say you buy a piece of real estate for $1 million. $500,000 is attributable to the land. $500,000 is attributable to the existing structures and improvements. In order to qualify, then you would have to spend $501,000 or $500,001 to double the basis of the improvements within this time period for that to be a qualifying asset. So no lipstick on a building just to clean it up. They want you to substantially improve the real estate and then make real large investments. There's a wide range of operating businesses that would qualify, however, not include making triple net leases because they feel that that's not operating real estate. However, double net leases do qualify. So as long as there's an operating component or responsibility of the landlord, investing in a net leased, double net leased property could qualify. Leased property located in an Opportunity Zone can count towards the 70% asset test. And the latest guidance kind of clarified and relaxed related party rules for leases. So there's, again, some opportunity to invest in a qualifying business that holds real estate, that leases to perhaps a related entity, that so you can kind of create your own benefits here by again, investing capital into these zones. Again, existing businesses can form subsidiaries that would qualify as Opportunity Zone businesses. There's a safe harbor for working capital held by the Qualified Opportunity Fund. This has been subject of a lot of the clarification and the guidance to make sure that money that was invested into a fund for a project wasn't invalidated because the project wasn't ready yet or something like that. So it's been clarified now that the funds can hold cash for up to 31 months, provided there's a written plan for how it will be deployed and ultimately invested. There's a safe harbor that's extended if waiting for a government decision. So if you're waiting for project approvals and you know if that's tying up your ability to build a building, there's an ability to extend for that. And there's a 6-month safe harbor for newly raised capital. So if you're syndicating a fund you've got a number of months to deploy that capital. So who stands to benefit from opportunity zones? I think a lot of this remains to be seen, but we've got certainly some ideas on who will benefit. I think the obvious is taxable investors with substantial unrealized capital gains. So high net worth individuals, have made substantial money in potentially equity holdings in the stock market. They could redeploy that capital into real estate and substantially benefit from this program. Businesses with substantial capital gains that could perhaps restructure subsidiary units as opportunity zone businesses to, again, shelter those gains. Lenders. So far, lenders have seemed to be cautious. One of the concerns is that the motivation of the program encourages long-term holds, and a lot of your commercial lenders prefer much shorter maturity dates, so the hold periods and the debt may not be perfectly aligned. It seems as though it could favor local and regional banks, which are already doing business in these local distressed areas and have a higher comfort level with the marketplace. There's industrial and office property owners. They could see increased leasing demand from opportunity zone businesses. Cities and municipalities could benefit from an expanding tax base, attracting residents and investments that bring in tax dollars. Obviously, developers, whether as opportunity zone funds themselves or acting as JV partners for funds, there's still some questions as to how promote structures would work and how the developers would be compensated in that sense. Owners of land or potential redevelopment sites in opportunity zones, there's some early indications that asking prices for opportunity zone land have increased. Real Capital Analytics just sent out a news article today about pretty substantial gains of around 20% in prices. And then the Zillow had done an article as well, I believe it was Zillow, that talked about residential home prices in opportunity zones. So we're seeing some increased values. I think one of the important things to remember is that this program wasn't designed to increase property values. So while we may be seeing that trend in the marketplace, that's not the goal of the program, and so that may not necessarily be a factor. What we're really looking for is community investment. We're looking for benefits to areas that are not seeing the level of investment that we'd like to see there. So the threshold for a lot of these investments is going to be getting into these markets earlier than maybe the investor would have, before it's gentrified, before the level of investment would typically encourage them to invest there. And then most important, actually fund managers, there's an estimated $100 billion that could be deployed under this program. The likelihood is that it'll be less than that. There's a lot of pretty lofty targets as far as fundraising out there. Cushman & Wakefield's tracking over 140 funds that have already raised $40 billion in capital. So that's a pretty substantial amount to be deployed here in the next number of years. And now that the clarifications and guidance are issued, we're starting to see some of the larger institutional players focus and create funds and start to pay attention. Most importantly, the community. This is all about community investment, community development, and I think that's the one that we have to make sure we don't forget. And there's been some of our folks back in D.C. that have specifically stated that if they're not seeing the community benefit that this program was designed for, they'll kill it. They want this to be successful for the reasons it was written. So with that, Bob, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Did a great job explaining all the details, the part that everybody doesn't want to read all those rules and stuff and understand exactly what it is. But you did a good job of it. It's a lot to learn about it. So let's talk about how we get involved in this and how it benefits you. Number one, you are the catalyst in your community to be involved in this. You know what's going on in your communities. You know where things should be, what you need, not what you want, things like that. So building relationships is the first thing. You need tax attorneys involved. You need CPAs involved. You need lawyers involved, accountants involved, because you're actually putting deals together is what you're doing. You're really a matchmaker. You're matching money with where the opportunity zone properties are and what needs to go on there and how you get that done. You know, we're all about listing, selling, completing, developing, whatever it is, and so we probably have more knowledge about how this can help a area than anybody. And that's why I'm in D.C. and in the meetings I've been in, I've put the realtors on the table and have put it to the White House and everybody else that we are the people that have the knowledge in the areas to do this. And so building these relationships in your town, in your county, is very important. There are a lot of resources that can help you with this. We'll go through those a little bit later, but there are tremendous amounts of resources on how investors can get involved, how realtors can get involved, how we put it all together and make it attractive investments. So, in short, you're putting the deals together. That's one way you're going to benefit. You're creating the right situations for these markets. You're going to be doing listings. You're going to have knowledge of the program. So, you want to create a coalition between philanthropy groups, developers, elected officials, county representatives, city representatives, community leaders, church groups, owners and residents of the opportunity zones. Realize that you're dealing with a part of town that's been looked over, left behind, didn't want to be there, doesn't have the right statistics and the right analytics you're looking for, but this is the opportunity that you have is to make money work in these areas. So I've had numerous phone calls from people all across the state since I've gotten involved in this at the White House and at NAR, and all of them are calling and saying, what do we do? How do we do this? And what I've learned is that the people want to do it, but they don't have the right people in the room yet. And you're one of the right people to be in the room because you know who the developers are that know how to develop things. You know who the bankers and the funding sources are that want to fund these type things. You know the movers and the shakers in town that can get things done. So what you want to do is create those coalitions and walk into the room and set up meetings that says, all right, y'all, listen up. Here's what we have to do. So that's the way I look at it. You bring those zoning officials in and you say, here's a location in the opportunity zone, and this is what we need. We need apartments. We need a grocery store. We need whatever it may be in that area you need. A business needs to go there. Something that needs to go in that opportunity zone that will change that area and change the people that live there. So you put them in the room, and then you start educating everybody how we put a deal together. You get the zoning officials to pre-zone something that says, we're going to do apartments, mixed use, grocery store, all on 10 acres in an area. You sit down with those zoning officials and you get somebody to lay it out on their staff or a private individual and say, all right, here's how we need to zone this. And they go ahead and pre-zone that. So basically what you're doing is you're pre-setting up a deal and handing it out to the money people and say, here's your deal, bring your money. So city planners, elected officials, all those people have to be in the room. The zoning officials and the planning commissions and the people that vote on what's allowed to go in an area, you're going to have to get them to understand they got to back off all their regulations. They got to back off all the infrastructure costs, all of their fees that they charge. You got to get them to buy into the whole program that makes it work. They can't do this like a normal deal where they want to charge me to zone property and pay all these fees and create all the infrastructure as a developer. They've got to buy into this and be part of it too. You got to educate your community people because they're not giving out money. This is tax. This is tax law. How do you make a deal work for investors to invest money and get returns in the opportunity zone. So you got to educate. You got to go to these to the groups in the neighborhoods and educate them as to why they have to be at the table too. There was a lot of discussion about this in our meetings in Washington, D.C. about bringing all the local community groups together first. And I disagree with that because they don't know the process. You have to bring them in and say, here's our process, and here's where you fit in, and here's how we do it better. Realtor Association. You need to get the leadership in that association and the commercial people in that association to understand that they are part of this movement. You got governmental affairs parts of the Realtor Association that understand dealing with these government officials. They can be involved. Your leadership within the local association can start twisting arms and pushing people, hey, we need to get something done. Let's get on this and get it done for our community. So that's how you get involved. How do you deploy this knowledge to benefit their clients, your clients and investors? Well, the first way is selling land. That's what we all do. Find and look up where are the opportunity zones, go study those zones, and see where the right place is to do a deal first to get it started. That's where I would start. Then you got to bring in the capital. Who's the capital? You put your deal together, you found the land, who's got the capital to do it? We'll go into resources, but there are websites. NAR has a website that has listed on there. Novogradac is one site that we've partnered with that has a list of over 140 funds that have money in them that says what they want, where they want it, how much money they have, and an email and a phone number. So there's your matchmaking. You put your deal together, you start calling these people and say, we want money here. You talk to your big people in town, say, we need your money. You want to invest in this community building project. Talk about the effects of the opportunity zone investment on the market. How's it going to change the market? Well, if you go into an area that typically these areas are in town where there's plenty of infrastructure available, there's plenty of roads, buses, trains, whatever it may be, that's close into the city where you can put people in neighborhoods if you're building apartments or you're building housing. And you just pitch all that together and say, we can put this here and it'll change this area. It makes a big difference. And help the clients identify them. If you go in and identify and you go to somebody and say, here's where the deal needs to go. It needs to go in this corner and here's why. So you're putting a development together is really what you're doing. Colleges, universities, hospitals, event centers. What do you need in that city that will change that area? A hospital. If it's needed in an area where they don't have much medical, get a community-oriented health group to come in and build some type of clinic there. There's so many ideas. Don't let this be just one thing. It can be 100 different things. Airports, ports on the rivers, ports on lakes, on the ocean, wherever it may be. Shopping center redevelopment, mixed-use conversions. There's all kinds of things that you can do. And one story that they told that'll kind of tell you, in Vicksburg, Mississippi, there was one of the first opportunity zone deals that was done was a sawmill. The sawmill was the main part of that city for many, many, many years. It had a pretty good sizable amount of employees. Well, it had gotten old, timber business kind of in the slack, and they decided to shut it down. Well, in the South, as we say, the town dried up. Everybody started going to another place to get a job. The grocery stores closed, housing suffered, and the governor of Mississippi and some other people talked to the mayor, and they had a guy in Alabama that had money that had just sold a big deal that was in the timber business. He saw the opportunity in this sawmill. He came in and bought it through the opportunity zone, created the business in the opportunity zone, retooled it, all new technology, put about 100 people back to work, and that was a year ago, just a little over a year ago. Now they've already got new grocery stores open. They're building new houses there. It changed that whole city. So that's the kind of ideas that you can think about. It may not be the most grandiose thing to do, but if you can bring employment and money into an area and housing, it's going to change that. Municipal buildings. One of the questions we had when we were in the White House at the Opportunity Zone Summit was, we the city need buildings, new municipal buildings. Can we build those in the opportunity zone? And of course, the IRS guy said, no, you can't do that. But a gentleman sitting at the table said, well, wait a minute. You can lease me the land. I'll build your building for you. I'll lease it to you for 10 years, and then I'll let you buy it. Can't we do that? Well, the IRS official said, yeah, but you can't preset the price for the sale. So realize there's so many things you can do that change a town or change a community just by thinking outside the box. So it's what I've said to a lot of people. This is just tax law, y'all. How many times have you tried to fit a deal into tax law and you figure out a way with your accountant or a lawyer or somebody that's done deals before and say, hey, if we do this, it'll fit the tax law. That's really what you're doing with this, is fitting it into tax law. So what's left out of the tax law? One of the main things, home ownership. Home ownership does not fit the tax law because it's short-term capital when you develop lots and sell houses. If I go to develop today, let's say I've got lots ready in a year, and then the builder comes in and builds them. He's 5 to 6 months, 7 months down the road, and he's selling houses. That's short-term capital, and that's not long-term gains. But I have made a proposal to the White House in writing to Dr. Carson and the White House officials to bring home ownership back into this. And it's by doing just what I said, create a business to develop lots. So you get write-offs, you fit the opportunity zone by creating that business and having employees, and you get tax benefits. The capital's put in and it stays in there. Then once the lots are developed, you create a building company that builds the houses. That fits the tax law. Then you do lease purchases for, say, 3 years. Gets you down the road to about 5 years. Then you've got capital gains that you can deal with, and you can pre-qualify those people to buy a house based on their income, expenses, credit, everything like that. And over the next 3 years, you put them through financial education, budget training, saving money, have their rent, part of their rent go into a savings account, part of their rent go into a repair budget, and you teach them how to be a homeowner, and then you close out that sale to them at 5 years, and you roll that over and you do another one. They like that. They're trying to figure out how to put it into play. We've got Senator Tim Scott and Cory Booker, who helped pass this law, now looking into this about possibly changing the law to fit that, somehow to fit that into there. I just lost my screen again. There we go. So those are some ideas, but home ownership is left out. Here's the problem. If we go in and develop these areas into housing, because that's what's needed, people in the area that own houses in that area, so 10 years from now when it's all rental property and it hadn't been kept up right, we're back to the same point we were. We got houses that have broken out windows, they need painting, they hadn't been maintained, we got cars on the blocks in the parking lot, and we're back to the same place we are today. That's why we have to have home ownership and ownership of the city and the people in that area that needs revitalizing to keep this going long term. So that's the gist of everything with this opportunity zone. There are so many possibilities and so many ways to do it. You've got to structure the deals where the investors will put the money in. They're not just going to throw money at it and hope they get some back. You've got to do your internal rates of return. You've got to do your full spreadsheet that shows the money you're going to spend, where it's going to go, who it's going to benefit, and how the returns are going to come back. If you can show that you're developing an apartment complex and it's got an internal rate of return of 22%, which is what most of them look for, they'll put their money there just as well as they will in a better part of town. That's part of how you benefit yourself and your community and the people that live there to get the opportunity zone to go forward. So I think that covers my part. Matt, I'll turn it back over to you, and I'll fill out a little more on the resources as we go.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Bob. Thank you. Yeah, you got the fun stuff. I got the details here. Is Bob hit on there? There's so many different ways to deploy capital in this space, and it's really going to benefit turnkey projects. So the more work we can do on the ground to create those turnkey opportunities, because it's all about time. The sooner they can get this money out in the marketplace and the longer they can hold that asset, the better the benefits. And we're coming up to a critical deadline here at the end of the year in order to get that 7-year hold period to maximize that step-up basis to the full 15% before the 2026 deadline. So hopefully our folks back in Washington will keep this program going and maybe give us some more runway here. But at the moment, getting money deployed here before the end of the year to maximize benefits is important. We've got a number of resources, as we've mentioned. There's active links on the PDF that I think Amanda will send out to the group if she hasn't already. That again, it's generally our notes and outlines, so you've got the benefit of all of our thoughts put down on paper, and then a number of resources that include FAQ sites at the Treasury's Community Development and Financial Institutions Fund, as well as the IRS page. There's tax forms for filing as a qualified opportunity fund, self-identifying. There's instructions for how to fill it out. There's a lists and maps of opportunity zones. Some are information that you can pull and use with your own GIS team. Some are online resources that you can work through and just look to see if there's zones in your area that you need to be aware of. There's the two issuances of IRS and Treasury guidance. We've got links to both of those documents so you can see the specific guidance and clarifications that have been issued. Connect Media has done a good job of following the opportunity zone kind of developments, and they've done a consistent issuance of articles on that. So we've got a link to Connect Media where you can sign up to get updates from their resources. There's a group called Develop LLC, which has created an Opportunity Zone Index. So it looks at a number of different stats and kind of analyzes each of the opportunity zones across the country. And it's kind of a heat map where the zones that, in their opinion, have greater opportunity, show up red, and the ones that have lower opportunity show up blue or something like that. But it's a good resource, again, just to kind of help you understand the lay of the land from some purely analytical perspectives. And then, Bob, you want to hit on what NAR is doing to further this?
Yeah, so NAR has a site. If you go to the Realtor homepage and just Google Opportunity Zone, there's a whole lot of information. We created this site to give you realtors access to a lot of data that we're collecting, so you can get that on there, and that's where you can go to Novogradac. If you go into the site, you can click on it. And Novogradac is listed there because they're tracking a lot. They're advisors, tax advisors, and they've got the list of funds on there. You can call them. They'll answer questions for you. We have created education grants, which are out right now to the commercial groups across the country. Got it first as the shot to get $5,000 to educate your community. Memphis has actually filed for one. I know many others have. And it's a grant for educating and informing your community as to why they need to be involved in opportunity zones. So if you're involved in a board of realtors somewhere, that is available to you. Residential, all the boards will be able to get it, I think, the first. I think next week is when it actually goes to all the rest of them. RPR, this has not been announced yet. It'll go out August the 1st. RPR has created, we jumped on this very early, it creates a search platform within RPR, which you have access to, that you can look at any of the opportunity zone maps and census tracts and everything within that under RPR and utilize it within your business model you are using RPR. And there's just so many places you can find information. But one thing I didn't say a few minutes ago is the reason I say you're the catalyst, if you are involved in selling land, buying land, or developing land, you can put yourself in as the expert in the middle of that, and you can actually be an owner in that process if you will do it and have an ownership in that development if you just negotiate your way into the deal because you brought it to the table, you educated everybody, you brought the money to the table. And it's a very good business model for realtors to use. And I know all of our members buy and sell and own and operate, and they understand this. And I'm doing it right now with one of my deals. I'm selling it, and I'm going to stay in as at least a 30% partner, and I'll get all my money on the front end by selling my property into the deal. And the numbers work. So don't negotiate yourself short, but there are a lot of resources out there, and you can call me anytime, and I'll put you in touch with whoever. But NAR is very much involved in this, and they're very much pushing this to help the members.
Yeah, that's great, Bob. And I think it's probably worth noting that with this kind of being the Wild West and a new regulatory environment, it is the Wild West, and there's a lot of people out there that you probably don't want to use as resources. So make sure you're going to respected resources, whether it be NAR or attorneys, consultants, CPAs that you trust and know and are kind of verified and vetted, because there's a lot of people out there putting together funds and offering up consulting services and things like that really don't have the bona fides to support the services they're offering. So be careful with where you're getting your information.
So I see a question on the thing. Mandy, you want to open up the questions? You want to start? There's a question from Virgil.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on now. Thank you again, Matt and Bob, for today's presentation. We'll now move into the Q&A section of this webinar. And if you have not already submitted your questions, please do so now in the chat box, and we will be monitoring that throughout this portion of the webinar. And I will start with the first question that we have that came in from one of our attendees, and they asked, how will the Opportunity Zone work on farmland that's bought and held?
That's a great question, and that's one that we've been thinking about critically. If you're buying and holding row crop land or grazing land or just open ground, our understanding is that would not qualify. Again, they're looking for some substantial investment into the asset. So one of the things we're trying to get clarification on is if you were to buy open ground and invest in biological assets, plant permanent plantings, trees, bushes, vines, something like that, could that qualify? And I know the Florida Bar Association has written a letter trying to get that guidance and make sure that that's in the tax law. We don't have 100% clarity on it yet. It seems like it could qualify, but we're still waiting. Now, the other nuance to that is, how about an Opportunity Zone business? I think that's where we might be able to see some greater opportunities in just kind of open ground, crop, row crop ground, something like that. Again, it's going to be nuanced. It's going to be with guidance from your CPAs and your attorneys. At this moment, it's still a gray area.
Well, the part of it is there are several of our members that are working on hemp production on raw farmland where they buy the land and they put it in the business. So you're exactly right on the business part of it, and it's just got to be cleared. Dan Kowalski, I think is how you pronounce his name, is the representative for the White House that answers most of these questions. And if we can get questions directly to him, he'll get us an answer instead of trying to go through the whole system. So that might be a shortcut. We can figure that out, and I'm glad to help with that. But I think it's got to go into a business side for it to be able to qualify.
Perfect. I think, Amanda, I will forward you the link to this article about Opportunity Zone land will cost you. It was published by Globe Street. So I'll send that out now to you, and Bob will copy you, and then if you can forward that out to the rest of the group.
Yes, definitely. I will forward that to the attendees along with the PDF of today's PowerPoint presentation and the outline that also provides you all links to the various resources that both Bob and Matt talked on today. So, and please feel free, if you guys have any other questions, once again, please type them into the chat box, and we are monitoring that during this portion of the session. And I see we have another question that came through from one of our other attendees, Terry. She had, asked, would that land then need to be located in an opportunity zone?
Yes, absolutely. Has to be operated. Has to be in an opportunity zone to even qualify, and there are certain ways that certain parts of it could be, a little portion of it could be out of the opportunity zone, but the majority of it has to be in the opportunity zone.
That's a good point, Bob, that census tracts don't necessarily follow parcel lines, and so there's some potential where a property would be both inside and outside of an opportunity zone. One of the things I've personally thought about is that the benefits of an opportunity zone may not necessarily stop at the census boundary either. These are artificial lines that the government's drawn. So when we're helping our clients, maybe purchasing something just outside of a designated opportunity zone is, a better value and doesn't necessarily qualify for the opportunity zone benefits, but it'll still receive the spillover effects of, improvement to the community. So there's a lot of different ways to think about this and ways to potentially benefit.
That's right. Then there's another question on here too about the 7-year, about the end of the year being an important date and extending the program. What that is you got to, when you deploy capital into the opportunity zone, to get the 10% and the additional 5% discount, you have a tax bill as you roll money into this. That tax bill is discounted by that 10% and 5% as you go 5 years or 7 years. You have to pay your capital gains tax on that rolled over money invested by 2026. So if you wait till after the first of the year, you're just shortening the time frame till you've got to pay the tax. You're not going to get the full 15% because you only have 7 years, and that's being decreased after the end of this year. It's not a penalty; it's just time, and what opportunity you get out, what discounts you get out of that.
Yep, great explanation. The next one is specific to a deal. If you own land in an opportunity zone and you have a company that wants to develop a truck stop on this site, how does the opportunity zone designation help either party? I think it depends is the easy answer. If the developer of the truck stop is in a position to leverage the opportunity zone to defer capital gains, or if they want to create an opportunity zone fund and develop this project in the fund and hold for a 10-year period, they could potentially avoid gains on the appreciation of the asset over that hold period. But it really it depends on what their specific goals are from the project, and it certainly isn't going to benefit every project that happens in an opportunity zone.
And add to that, Matt, part of the benefit of this, having a business in the opportunity zone, is workforce. They really want to create jobs and income in those areas, and that's part of having a business in an opportunity zone, is creating employees that make money and can live within that zone, and that's very important. And so if they're going to create a truck stop and employ, 15, 20 people, whatever they do in a truck stop, then that business in an opportunity zone has a good bit of tax benefits to it. They just have to get with their accountant and figure out all the ways they can write off and how they fit into the opportunity zone. But yes, it will work. It's just got to be deployed long enough to make it work.
Yeah. On a simply real estate perspective, our research team at Cushman & Wakefield has done some analysis and basically said on an unlevered basis, so with no debt, if you were to hold for the 10-year period, it's easy to see 150 to 300 basis point increase to your internal rate of return. So that's a meaningful benefit to the bottom line on an IRR basis, and then on top of that, if you can defer your gains from the investment due to appreciation, it's an even greater impact after tax.
That's right. All right, how do you deal with not in my backyard proposed apartment complex and opportunity zone? Well, Terry, that's the part I was talking about where you go in the front end and you get with the zoning people, your city officials, and you start educating everybody. So, look, this is an opportunity zone. This is going to be good for the area. It's going to create workforce. It's going to create income. It's going to create a place for people to live. And you just got to go in and fight it. And there's a big movement across this country about the not in my backyard going on. They're actually undoing, there's been several cities that have gone to eliminating single-family zoning to allow different zoning within single-family areas. So there's a movement now, and there's education going on now about this not in my backyard. Salt Lake City that and Utah both did a study that showed where people don't want anything built in their backyard, that it's inward migration. It's our kids, it's our families that are growing that are needing housing, not people moving in from somewhere else. So that the education part of it is very important across this country to educate people that it's not keeping people out, it's the people in the community that need housing, and you've got to build this stuff, and it's making a difference.
Yep, I'd say the same way you deal with it on any other entitlement project, with the addition of one more tool and one more arrow in your quiver, and that's leveraging that it's within an opportunity zone, and it's where the federal and state governments and to some extent the local governments have told us they want us to invest.
Just like in Kentucky, the governor of Kentucky deployed a person who works for him to do nothing but go stand in cases where people are saying we don't want this, and helping that city from the state level to get these things zoned and approved by putting the governor's weight behind it. And so there's a lot of good stuff going on with this.
We have one more question that I'm looking back at the chat box that I think we might have missed. One of our attendees asked, where would they be able to find the list of funds?
So there's several on here, but Novogradac is the one that NAR partnered with on their website, and that website is novoco.com. But you can Google it. There's plenty of them out there, but that's on the NAR website. I've talked to Mike Novogradac, the owner of the company. He's willing to help. I've sent several people there. One of the hemp farm people out of Texas called and got great advice from them. A lady from Hawaii called and got great advice from them. So they're willing to help. They're tax advisors. They can help you with this. Novogradac is the company, but it's novoco.com.
Yeah, feel free to reach out. I think Bob and I are both resources. We're not going to have all the answers, but we'll try to point you in the right direction. Commissioner Lakefield's done a lot of research. We've got kind of an index of some of the hottest potential communities to invest in. There's a lot of tools out there. If you start Googling or reach out to one of us, we can point you in the right direction.
And there's lots and lots of money looking for places to invest. They're saying probably as much as $300 billion is already sitting in funds looking for places to invest. They'll analyze the deals. They'll look at how they work, make sure it's where they want to be. But there are philanthropy groups within those funds that are looking just to deploy capital in these areas to say that they did it and not necessarily make a return. So don't let the normal pattern stop you. You can do a lot of things if you'll just get involved in it.
Great. Once again, thank you so much, Matt and Bob, for today. I see that we're coming to the end of today's session. We're at 12:59 Central Time. Before I wrap anything up, is there any other additional questions? If not, I have Matt and Bob's email contact information up on the screen, and I will also be sharing that with you all after this presentation. As I mentioned, I will be providing a copy of the PowerPoint slides as well as the webinar outline, which contains additional links to the resources that both Matt and Bob had touched upon during the presentation. And then also I will be providing you a link to the article that came out today, and then the link to the website that provides a list of funds. So as again, thank you so much to Matt and Bob. And then, as I mentioned, their contact information is up on the screen, so please feel free to reach out to them for any additional information or questions that you may have. And I would like to thank you all again for attending today's webinar on finding the opportunity in Opportunity Zones. So thank you so much again, Matt and Bob.
Thanks all. Hope it was helpful.
Thanks. Glad y'all joined us. We can ever help. Just let us know.
Thank you.
Thanks. See y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.